You hear that? That supercharged fire-spitting V-12 crackling to life were the first words of a military-industrial complex in its infancy. Want to hear it again? Oh, ecstasy. The P45 is an Anglo-American love child that harnesses the power of a British V12 engine nestled deep within an airframe of an icon as recognizable as the Statue of Happiness. These innovations only happen once every decade or so. What makes the P45 different from your Mambas and projectile-themed Vapid GT cars is that the Americans came to the British for help with its powertrain, instead of the other way around. The Nokota harkens back to an era when missile guidance systems were science fiction. The waifu picture you had taped up was actually a picture of your wife, and dogfighting wasn't seen as a long-lost art. It was your only way home. Considering the airplane was nothing more than wood and fabric just 20 years prior, the airmen operating these high-tech death traps were the astronauts of their time. By the spring of 1940, the British Parliament knew the German war machine had eyes on an armistice, and its infrastructure in its crosshairs. They also realized their numerical equilibrium would only last so long. Conveniently, the United States' approval of the German Empire was once again souring, and the brows of its neutral politicians began to sweat. In no time, a deal was struck and the development for a brand new fighter plane took action. The earliest iteration of the P45 was built to the specifications of His Majesty. However, the American V-12 the plane was built for proved to be less than ideal for high-altitude combat above Europe. By 1943, the plane that the British pilots aptly referred to as the Nokota was rejigged to fit a supercharged Buckingham V-12. The engine in question was built by a notorious and now long-dead American luxury car company. The Nokota was designed around two central themes: agility and endurance. It should be obvious why anyone would want their dogfighter to be agile, but many fighter planes weren't equipped to make long trips in a single flight. Naturally, bombing sprees across Europe took some time, so the Nokota's large fuel capacity and optional drop tanks made it a must-have. Even the Americans figured this out by 1944, when they realized that a bomber was still a gigantic, slow-moving target, regardless of how many extra guns they tacked to it. The Nokota is nothing short of a status symbol, though it would be fair to say that some historians have looked back at the aircraft, perhaps a little too generously. The P-45 might have been one of the better piston aircrafts of the war, but it wasn't the most advanced, nor the most powerful. As hard as they may have tried, the Navy felt that the P-45 lacked the power to launch from an aircraft carrier, and they also felt that it lacked the airframe strength for repeated landings. What the P-45 did have was abundance. At the height of its wartime industry, the US was pumping out military hardware, munitions, and vehicles faster than, well, anything. US aircraft production by 1944 eclipsed most countries' entire wartime production with a whopping 96,000 units. And of the more than 300,000 total aircraft produced, over 13,000 were Nokotas. The P-45's claustrophobic cockpit gives you all the essentials one might expect from an 80-year-old airplane. All your flight control gauges on the instrument panel are outlined with a helpful yellow line. Naturally, your flight stick sits front and center, and the lever to control your prop RPMs sits on the left-hand side. We'll call it there, though. There's no shortage of aeronautical doodads and communication equipment inside of this thing to go through. The aircraft's sleek appearance can be attributed to its smooth-over rivets and tapered wings, which lower the aircraft's drag coefficient. The underbelly of the plane bears a clean air scoop that feeds the plane's radiator. As for armaments, the Nokota comes off the line with not 4, but 6 machine guns built for medium to long-range engagements. The wing rack on some variants were even rated to fit rocket pylons, giving the enemy an extra special surprise. As far as performance goes, these planes are stellar. They cut and climb through the air with such ease that you begin to wonder why bird strikes didn't happen more often. The P-45's V-12 might not sing the same notes as a Pegasi supercar, but rest assured, it doesn't need to sing to win over a crowd. The role of the fighter plane has changed drastically. So much so that before the war was even over, the Nokota was taking on German first-generation jet fighters. Opinions may vary on which wartime fighter plane was the best on paper and in practice, but the numbers don't lie. The P-45 was used as a reserve craft until the 1950s, when Korea couldn't decide what ideology it wanted. Countries across the globe bought up surplus P-45s, with the last plane retiring in 1984. I'd say it's competent. In conclusion, it's imperative to remember that the humble Nokota pilot had to walk before the laser pilot could even think about playing shirtless volleyball.